when I say that I should, that means that I should put my...
On the night of the 4th of April, 1958, Hollywood's glamorous facade was shattered by a single scream and the thrust of a knife. Inside the Beverly Hills home of movie star Lana Turner, one of the most famous actresses of her era, her teenage daughter Cheryl Crane had just stabbed Turner's boyfriend, Johnny Stompanato, to death. The killing sent shockwaves through America, igniting a scandal that blended celebrity, crime, and sensational media frenzy in a way the public had never seen before. To the outside world, Lana Turner was the embodiment of Hollywood perfection. With her platinum blonde hair, flawless beauty, and a career spanning hit films like The Postman Always Rings Twice and Peyton Place, she was adored as one of MGM's brightest stars. But behind the glamour, her private life was a minefield of failed marriages, turbulent romances, and personal struggles. And none was more dangerous than her affair with Johnny Stompanato. Stompanato was no Hollywood leading man. He was a former U.S. Marine turned bodyguard and enforcer for mobster Mickey Cohen, one of Los Angeles' most notorious crime bosses. Handsome, charming, but violent and controlling, Stompanato had a reputation for being possessive with women and quick to anger. When he entered Lana Turner's life in 1957, he brought danger and chaos into her world, an intoxicating mix that would soon spiral into tragedy. Their relationship was explosive from the start. Lana, known for her love of romance and her vulnerability to bad men, was swept away by Johnny's attention and intensity. But beneath the surface, Stompanato was manipulative, physically abusive, and fiercely jealous. Friends recalled bruises Lana tried to hide, the constant shouting matches, and the way Johnny shadowed her every move. For a star who had worked her whole life to control her career, Lana found herself trapped in a personal nightmare. On that fateful April night, the nightmare reached its breaking point. After a vicious argument between Lana and Johnny escalated, Cheryl Crane, then just 14 years old, grabbed a kitchen knife to protect her mother. In the heat of the moment, she stabbed Stompanato once in the abdomen. Within minutes, the gangster was dead. What followed was one of the most sensational scandals in Hollywood history. A glamorous movie star, a dead mobster, and a teenage daughter caught in the middle. Every element was ripe for headline. The press descended like vultures. The courtroom became a stage, and the public couldn't look away. This wasn't just another Hollywood breakup. It was a deadly tragedy that exposed the dark underbelly of stardom. To understand the scandal that would one day rock Hollywood, you first have to understand the lives of the two central figures: Lana Turner, the sweater girl, whose beauty captured the dreams of millions, and Johnny Stompanato, the gangster whose charm hid a violent undercurrent. Their very different backgrounds set the stage for their fateful collision. Lana Turner's early years. Born Julia Jean Turner in 1,921 inches Wallace, Idaho, Lana's early childhood was far from glamorous. Her father was a miner who was murdered when she was just 9 years old, leaving her family in financial hardship. Her mother, desperate to provide, moved with young Lana to California, hoping for a better life. It was in Los Angeles that fate intervened. At just 16, Lana was discovered by Hollywood talent scout William Wilkerson while sipping a soda at a cafe. Her stunning looks, blonde hair, violet blue eyes, and flawless figure caught his attention immediately. Within months, she was cast in minor roles, and by 1937, her small part in They Won't Forget made her an overnight sensation. Hollywood labeled her the sweater girl after her figure-hugging outfit turned her into a national pinup. But behind the fame, Lana struggled with personal instability. She was young, impressionable, and swept into a world of glamour, money, and temptation. She married 7 times, each union ending in divorce or heartbreak. Still, she was resilient, balancing her tumultuous love life with a flourishing career that peaked in the 1,940 seconds and 1,950 seconds. Films like The Postman Always Rings Twice, 1,946, cemented her as one of MGM's brightest stars, and by the mid-1,950 seconds, she was a household name. Yet the very fame that elevated her also made her vulnerable, drawn to dangerous men, and unable to escape public scrutiny. Johnny Stompanato's early years. In stark contrast, John Stompanato Jr., was born in 1925 inches, Quincy, Illinois, to a working-class Italian-American family. After serving in the U.S. Marines during World War II, he drifted west, lured by the promises of Los Angeles. But unlike Lana, Hollywood didn't offer him stardom. Instead, he slipped into its shadows. Handsome and well-built, Johnny quickly found work as a bodyguard and enforcer for Mickey Cohen, Los Angeles' most notorious gangster. Cohen ran gambling rings, extortion rackets, and prostitution networks, and Stompanato became one of his loyal lieutenants. To outsiders, Johnny projected the image of a suave ladies' man, tailored suits, slick back hair, and an easy smile. But those who knew him understood the darker side. He was quick with his fists, volatile when jealous, and unafraid to use intimidation to control women. Johnny's reputation with women was especially notorious. He pursued glamorous actresses, lured by their fame and money. He had relationships with several Hollywood figures, though many ended with stories of abuse and manipulation. By the time he met Lana Turner in 1957, he was already known as a dangerous figure, blending the allure of a Hollywood leading man with the menace of an underworld thug. The collision of two worlds. Lana Turner, by the mid-1950s, was at the height of her career. Yet beneath the glitz, she longed for stability and genuine love after years of failed marriages. When she encountered Johnny Stompanato, she was vulnerable, lonely, weary of Hollywood's false promises, and craving affection. Johnny, with his smooth charm and protective demeanor, appeared to offer exactly what she needed. But what seemed like protection quickly became possession. Their relationship grew intense almost immediately, fueled by Johnny's jealous streak and Lana's susceptibility to men who offered passion over peace. For Lana, Johnny represented excitement, danger, and the kind of raw attention that flattered her. For Johnny, Lana was the ultimate prize, a Hollywood starlet whose fame elevated his own status in Los Angeles' underworld. Friends warned her. Studio executives cautioned her. Even her teenage daughter Cheryl was unsettled by Johnny's presence. But Lana, like many before her, believed she could handle him, that love or loyalty could tame his temper. Instead, she had unknowingly invited chaos into her home. Their backgrounds, Lana's rise from tragedy to Hollywood stardom, Johnny's descent into crime and violence, were destined to clash. She represented the dream factory, an actress adored by millions. He represented the dark side of Los Angeles, a reminder that beneath the glitter, Hollywood was a city built on shadows. And when these two worlds collided, the result was explosive. What began as a romance steeped in glamour would unravel into a scandal of violence, betrayal, and death, one that would dominate headlines and forever change the legacy of Lana Turner. When Lana Turner first crossed paths with Johnny Stompanato in 1957, it seemed like another Hollywood romance destined for headlines. She was one of MGM's brightest stars, admired worldwide for her beauty and talent. He was tall, handsome, and carried himself with the swagger of a leading man. But while Lana was basking in stardom, Johnny was navigating a much darker world, the Los Angeles underworld, where he worked as an enforcer for gangster Mickey Cohen. Their introduction was hardly glamorous. Some accounts suggest they met at a Hollywood party. Others say he was introduced through mutual friends. What is certain is that Johnny wasted no time in pursuing Lana. He sent flowers, charmed her with smooth talk, and showered her with the kind of attention she was always vulnerable to. Lana, who longed for affection after a string of failed marriages, fell quickly under his spell. For Lana, Johnny was exciting in ways other men weren't. He made her feel desired, adored, even protected. He accompanied her to premieres, whispered reassurances in her ear, and presented himself as the man who could shield her from the loneliness of fame. Lana, weary of being a tabloid target for her failed romances, found comfort in his intensity. To outsiders, they looked like a glamorous couple, an actress and her dashing beau. But those close to Lana noticed red flags almost immediately. Johnny's protectiveness was less about love and more about control. He demanded to know her whereabouts at all times, grew furious when she spoke to other men, and treated her career obligations with suspicion. When she was filming or promoting a movie, Johnny was often lurking nearby, his jealousy simmering just beneath the surface. His connection to Mickey Cohen added a layer of menace. Cohen, who controlled much of the city's vice operations, liked to flaunt Johnny as part of his entourage. Hollywood insiders whispered about the actress consorting with the gangster, but Lana brushed off the warnings. To her, Johnny's dangerous reputation only made him more intriguing. At first, Lana tolerated his jealous fits, believing she could manage him. She had dealt with difficult men before and assumed this was no different. But soon, Johnny's temper escalated into physical abuse. Friends recalled bruises she tried to cover with makeup and long sleeves. There were stories of shouting matches that rattled her Beverly Hills home, of threats Johnny made when he suspected her of drifting away. Yet, as is often the case in toxic relationships, the cycle of abuse was followed by apologies and gifts. Johnny would shower Lana with flowers, jewelry, and sweet words, convincing her that his outbursts were simply the result of his passion. Lana, craving love and stability, forgave him again and again. The tension wasn't confined to private moments. Publicly, Johnny embarrassed Lana with his possessiveness. At the 1958 Academy Awards, where Lana was nominated for her role in Peyton Place, he caused a scene by accusing her of flirting with other men. That night, instead of celebrating her nomination, she endured another argument. For Lana, whose career depended on her image, Johnny's behavior was not only painful but professionally damaging. Behind closed doors, Lana's teenage daughter Cheryl Crane watched uneasily. She saw the bruises, heard the arguments, and resented Johnny's presence in their home. Cheryl later described feeling like she was living in constant fear, worried about her mother's safety and uncertain of what Johnny might do next. Still, Lana clung to the relationship. Part of it was emotional dependency, part of it was fear of Johnny's threats, and part of it was the hope that things might change. She wasn't the first Hollywood star to fall for the wrong man, but in Johnny, the stakes were higher because his temper and connections to organized crime made him more dangerous than anyone she had ever loved before. As their romance deepened, so did the volatility. Friends began to avoid visiting her home, wary of the tension in the air. Studio executives pressured Lana to distance herself from Johnny, concerned that his reputation would damage her career. But Lana resisted, torn between her love for him and her need to maintain her image. By early 1958, the relationship was reaching a breaking point. Lana tried several times to end things, but Johnny wouldn't let go. He threatened her, stalked her, and refused to leave quietly. What began as a glamorous Hollywood fling had transformed into a dangerous entanglement, one that seemed destined to end badly. And it did. Just a year after their romance began, their love story would explode into violence, leaving Johnny dead on the floor of Lana's home and Lana and Cheryl at the center of one of Hollywood's most infamous scandals. By early 1958, what had begun as a whirlwind romance between Lana Turner and Johnny Stompanato had transformed into a suffocating nightmare. The glamour of being courted by a handsome man quickly gave way to fear, control, and escalating violence. To outsiders, they still looked like a Hollywood couple photographed at parties, seen driving through Beverly Hills in Lana's Cadillac. But inside the walls of Lana's home, the tension was unbearable. Johnny Stompanato's jealousy knew no limits. Every phone call, every meeting, every glance from another man was enough to spark suspicion. Lana's career made matters worse. As an actress, she was constantly in the company of male co-stars, producers, and executives. For Johnny, this was intolerable. He would show up unannounced at her sets, hovering like a shadow, glaring at anyone who dared speak to her. On one occasion, while Lana was filming overseas, Johnny flew to the set uninvited, creating a scene that embarrassed both her and the studio. His possessiveness became so disruptive that MGM executives considered cutting ties with Lana altogether. Hollywood loved scandal, but a gangster's grip on one of its brightest stars was dangerous for business. The violence behind closed doors. Friends and family noticed bruises Lana attempted to conceal with makeup and long sleeves. Cheryl Crane, Lana's teenage daughter, later described hearing vicious arguments that shook the house. Johnny's temper often exploded into physical abuse, his charm replaced by threats and intimidation. For Lana, who had endured a string of failed marriages and heartbreaks, the abuse left her torn. Part of her wanted to escape, Yet part of her remained ensnared by Johnny's cycle of violence and apology. He would rage, strike, then shower her with flowers or expensive gifts, convincing her he was truly sorry. It was a toxic loop, one she couldn't easily break. The Oscar night incident. The public got its first glimpse of the chaos on the night of the 1958 Academy Awards. Lana had been nominated for Best Actress for her role in Peyton Place, a career highlight. It should have been a night of triumph. Instead, it became one of humiliation. Johnny, consumed by jealousy, accused her of flirting with other men at the ceremony. Instead of celebrating, Lana endured one of his notorious tirades. That night was emblematic of their entire relationship, moments of glamour eclipsed by Johnny's rage. For Lana, the realization grew clear. This was not love. It was control, and it was becoming increasingly dangerous. The final weeks. By March 1958, Lana had tried multiple times to end the relationship. Each time, Johnny threatened her. He told her that if she left him, he would ruin her career by exposing intimate details of their life. He threatened violence, not only against her but against anyone he believed was helping her. Cheryl, watching her mother's fear grow, became increasingly protective. She had never liked Johnny, sensing his danger from the start. As the fights intensified, Cheryl's resentment hardened into outright hatred. She confided to friends that she wished Johnny would leave forever. The breaking point. On the 4th of April 1958, the cycle of abuse reached its most terrifying climax. Lana and Johnny had yet another explosive argument in her Beverly Hills home. Voices rose, threats were shouted, and fear filled the air. Cheryl, just 14 years old, listened from another room. She had seen her mother cry too many times, had heard the blows, the insults, the endless shouting. That night, something in her snapped. When the argument reached its peak, Cheryl ran to the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and burst into the room where Johnny was confronting her mother. In a split-second decision driven by fear, she plunged the knife into Johnny's abdomen. Johnny collapsed, fatally wounded. Within minutes, the man who had terrorized Lana Turner and her daughter was dead on the floor of their home. Hollywood in shock. News of the killing spread like wildfire. Within hours, the glamorous image of Lana Turner was juxtaposed with the gruesome reality of her boyfriend lying dead. The story had all the elements the public craved: a famous actress, a mobster lover, a teenage daughter, and a killing inside a Beverly Hills mansion. The scandal was immediate and overwhelming. Reporters camped outside Lana's home. Headlines screamed of murder, betrayal, and Hollywood gone wrong. The police investigation was swift, but the sensationalism was unstoppable. Everyone wanted to know, was this self-defense, an accident, or something more sinister? What had begun as a toxic romance had now escalated into one of Hollywood's most infamous tragedies. A scandal that would dominate newspapers for months and forever alter Lana Turner's legacy. The night of the 4th of April, 1958, began like so many others in the Turner household, tense, volatile, and simmering with fear. Lana Turner and Johnny Stompanato were once again locked in a bitter argument inside her Beverly Hills home. To neighbors, their shouting was nothing new. The couple's fights had become notorious. But this time, the violence would escalate into tragedy. The fatal night. According to later accounts, Johnny had grown enraged over rumors of Lana seeing other men. His jealousy boiled over into threats. He warned Lana that if she ever left him, he would destroy her career, expose her private life, and harm those she loved. Some reports suggested he brandished a weapon. Others insisted he used only his fists and words. But one thing was clear: Lana was terrified. 14-year-old Cheryl Crane, Lana's daughter, overheard the chaos from another room. She had seen Johnny's temper before, had witnessed her mother in tears and bruised. But on this night, the danger felt immediate. Fearing for her mother's life, Cheryl rushed to the kitchen, grabbed a butcher knife, and confronted Johnny. In a single, desperate motion, she plunged the blade into his abdomen. The blow pierced his liver and aorta. Johnny staggered, collapsed, and within moments, bled to death on Lana Turner's bedroom floor. The room fell silent except for Lana's horrified sobs and Cheryl's panicked breathing. The glamorous world of Lana Turner, the premieres, The diamonds, the adoring fans, had been shattered by one violent act of desperation. The aftermath. Within hours, police swarmed the Turner home. News reporters weren't far behind. The combination of a dead mobster, a movie star, and a teenage daughter was irresistible to the press. Flashbulbs popped as Lana, still in shock, tried to shield Cheryl from the swarm of photographers. Johnny Stompanato's connections to Mickey Cohen made the situation even more volatile. Rumors circulated that Cohen might retaliate against Lana or Cheryl for Johnny's death. Police heightened security, and Lana lived in fear not only of losing her career but also of mob revenge. The inquest. Instead of a criminal trial, the case was brought to a coroner's inquest, a public hearing to determine the circumstances of Johnny's death. The proceedings became a media circus, drawing hundreds of reporters and spectators. For the public, it was part courtroom drama, part Hollywood spectacle. The star witness was Lana Turner herself. On April 11, she took the stand, dressed elegantly in black, her voice trembling as she recounted the events leading to Johnny's death. She described his jealousy, his threats, and the fear that had plagued their relationship. The press lapped it up, painting her as both victim and tragic heroine. The most dramatic moment came when Lana produced a handwritten love letter Johnny had given her, filled with apologies and desperate declarations. Reading it aloud, her voice cracked, and the courtroom fell silent. To many, it was a performance as powerful as anything she had delivered on screen. Critics later debated whether her testimony was genuine or carefully rehearsed. But for the jury and the public, the effect was undeniable. Cheryl, meanwhile, admitted to stabbing Johnny but insisted it was done to protect her mother. Her youth and demeanor stirred sympathy. The idea of a 14-year-old intentionally committing murder seemed unthinkable. Instead, she was portrayed as a brave daughter, forced into a horrific situation by an abusive man. The verdict. After days of testimony and public scrutiny, the inquest jury delivered its verdict. Justifiable homicide. Cheryl Crane was exonerated, declared to have acted in defense of her mother. The decision sparked fierce debate. Some argued justice had been served. Johnny Stompanato was a violent man, and his death prevented greater tragedy. Others claimed Hollywood privilege had shielded Lana and Cheryl from harsher consequences. Regardless, the scandal had already left its mark. Lana Turner's image, once carefully curated by MGM Studios, was forever altered. She was no longer just the glamorous star. She was the woman whose daughter killed her abusive lover. For some, it tarnished her legacy. For others, it made her more human, a mother caught in extraordinary circumstances. The public reaction. The press devoured every detail. Newspapers ran lurid headlines. Star's lover slain. Daughter saves actress from mobster. Hollywood in shock. The story had everything: sex, violence, celebrity, and the underworld. It dominated front pages for weeks, eclipsing even global political news. Fans were divided. Some wrote letters of support, praising Lana for her courage and expressing sympathy for Cheryl. Others condemned her, accusing her of bringing danger into her home through her poor choices in men. MGM, wary of the scandal's impact, distanced itself but couldn't sever ties entirely. Lana was still too valuable as a box office draw. The personal cost. Though cleared legally, Cheryl Crane's life was forever changed. She became known not for her own accomplishments, but for being the girl who killed Johnny Stompanato. In interviews years later, Cheryl admitted she had acted out of fear and love for her mother. But the burden of that night haunted her for decades. For Lana, the scandal was both a curse and a strange form of rebirth. Her reputation was battered, but her career survived. Just a year later, she starred in Imitation of Life, 1959, which became one of her biggest commercial successes. The film's themes of motherhood and sacrifice struck a chord with audiences, blurring the lines between her on-screen roles and her real-life struggles. Still, the shadow of Johnny's death lingered. For the rest of her life, Lana could never fully escape the scandal. No matter how many films she made or awards she won, her name was forever linked to the night her daughter killed her lover. When the coroner's inquest declared Johnny Stompanato's death a justifiable homicide, the legal battle officially ended. But in reality, the fallout had only just begun. The killing was no longer a matter for the courts, it was a matter for the public, and the public was both fascinated and divided. The scandal clung to Lana Turner like a shadow, shaping her career, her family, and her legacy for years to come. Hollywood in crisis. Hollywood thrived on scandal, but this one was different. This wasn't a salacious affair or a messy divorce. It was death, mobsters, and a teenage girl with a knife. Studio executives at MGM were horrified. Lana had been one of their biggest stars for nearly 2 decades, and now her name was tied to organized crime and homicide. Behind closed doors, they debated whether to sever her contract. But in the end, they calculated that controversy sold tickets. If handled carefully, the scandal might even revive her career. MGM leaned into damage control. Publicists framed Lana as a tragic heroine, a glamorous woman trapped in an abusive relationship, rescued by her daughter's desperate act. They fed this narrative to the press, painting Johnny Stompanato as the villain. It wasn't hard. Johnny's mob ties, history of abuse, and reputation as a jealous, controlling man made him an easy target. The public reaction. Audiences, however, were split. Some saw Lana as a victim of circumstances beyond her control, a mother saved by her daughter's bravery. Fan mail poured in expressing sympathy. Others condemned her, arguing that her poor judgment in men had endangered her daughter in the first place. How many husbands has she had? Critics sneered, pointing to her long list of failed marriages. To them, Johnny's presence in her home was proof that Lana's personal life was reckless, irresponsible, and immoral. Tabloids had a field day. Sensational headlines screamed across front pages. Movie queen in mobster murder drama. Star's daughter saves her from death. Hollywood sirens love, life turns deadly. The story combined celebrity glamour with noir-like violence, and the public couldn't get enough. For weeks, Johnny Stompanato's death overshadowed everything else in the news. The mob angle. The fact that Johnny had been an enforcer for Mickey Cohen added a dangerous edge. Rumors spread that Cohen might retaliate against Lana or Cheryl for Johnny's death. Police increased security around her home, and for months, Lana lived in fear of mob vengeance. But Cohen himself reportedly dismissed the idea of revenge. Stompanato, he suggested, had brought about his own downfall through his violence and jealousy. Still, the whispers of mob connections only deepened the scandal's allure. Cheryl Crane's burden. For Cheryl Crane, the aftermath was even more difficult. At just 14 years old, she was thrust into the harsh glare of public scrutiny. Though legally cleared, she became infamous as the girl who killed Johnny Stompanato. Schoolmates whispered behind her back. The press hounded her, and her adolescence was stolen by a single act of desperate self-defense. In later years, Cheryl will speak openly about the toll it took on her. She described feeling alienated, marked forever by that night, though she eventually built a life of her own as an interior designer and author. The shadow of Stompanato's death never fully disappeared. Lana's career resurrection. Despite the scandal, Lana Turner's career did not collapse. In fact, just a year later, she starred in Imitation of Life, 1959, a film that became one of the biggest hits of her career. Its themes of motherhood, sacrifice, and resilience resonated deeply with audiences, many of whom projected Lana's real-life struggles onto her character. Critics marveled at her performance, and for a time, the scandal seemed to enhance rather than diminish her star power. Yet the damage was never completely erased. From then on, her personal life was inseparable from her public image. Every interview, every profile, every retrospective on her career inevitably circled back to Johnny Stompanato. She could not escape the scandal. She could only live with it. A divided legacy. The backlash and fascination persisted for decades. Some hailed Lana as a survivor, a woman who endured abuse and tragedy while continuing to shine on screen. Others branded her reckless, a cautionary tale about the perils of poor judgment and the cost of Hollywood excess. The scandal also reshaped how audiences viewed Hollywood itself. It revealed the stark contrast between the glamorous image projected on screen and the messy, dangerous realities behind the scene. In many ways, the Turner-Stompanato affair foreshadowed the tabloid culture that would dominate decades later, where celebrities' private lives became as important and as monetizable as their professional achievements. The lasting scandal. Even after Lana's career wound down, the Stompanato scandal followed her. Documentaries, biographies, and retrospectives never failed to revisit that night in 1958. For some, it became the defining story of her life, overshadowing her 7 marriages, her career triumphs, and even her resilience in later years. For Hollywood, the scandal was both a black eye and a windfall. It was proof that stars were human, flawed, and vulnerable. And it was a reminder that the same glamour that captivated audiences could also conceal darkness. In the end, the story of Lana Turner and Johnny Stompanato is not simply a tale of Hollywood glamour. It is a cautionary saga of love, danger, and the heavy price of fame. What began as a whirlwind romance ended in bloodshed, forever changing the lives of everyone involved. For Lana Turner, the scandal was both her greatest humiliation and, paradoxically, a strange kind of salvation. It exposed her vulnerability to the world, a glamorous movie star who, behind closed doors, was trapped in an abusive relationship. It forced audiences to see beyond the sequin gowns and red carpets, to glimpse the pain of a woman who, like many others, had fallen prey to a man who confused love with control. The tragedy nearly destroyed her career, yet she emerged from it with renewed strength, delivering one of her greatest performances in Imitation of Life just a year later. For Cheryl Crane, the cost was even higher. At only 14, she carried the weight of taking a life. Though legally exonerated, she was never free of the label the press branded her with: the girl who killed Johnny Stompanato. Her act, born of desperation to protect her mother, would haunt her forever. Yet, in later years, Cheryl turned her pain into resilience, carving out a quiet life far from the Hollywood spotlight. As for Johnny Stompanato, his death immortalized him as one of the most infamous figures in Hollywood history, not for his mob ties, but for the way his life ended. He became a cautionary symbol of the dark forces lurking behind the film industry's glittering facade. To many, he was a reminder that beneath the red carpets and bright lights, there existed a dangerous underworld ready to entangle even its brightest stars. The scandal also changed the public's relationship with Hollywood. Audiences had always loved gossip, but this story was different. It was raw, tragic, and unavoidably real. The idea that one of the most glamorous women in the world could be drawn into such darkness shattered the illusion of Hollywood perfection. It marked a shift in how celebrity culture was consumed, paving the way for the tabloid-driven world we know today. Looking back, the Lana Turner, Johnny Stompanato scandal endures not just because of its sensational details, but because it was profoundly human. It was about a woman searching for love in the wrong places, a daughter willing to risk everything to protect her mother, and a man whose demons ultimately consumed him. Lana Turner continued to act, to love, and to live. But she never escaped the shadow of that night in 1958. For the rest of her life, no matter how dazzling her performances, she was forever linked to Johnny Stompanato's death. And perhaps that is why the scandal remains so haunting, because it reminds us that even the brightest stars cannot outrun the darkness that fame sometimes hides. In the story of Lana and Johnny, Hollywood gave us not a fairy tale, but a tragedy, one that continues to fascinate, horrify, and captivate generations long after the curtain fell.